Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. I am so excited to be here with you this week. Even though, we are going to be talking about a Nashville SC loss, still is not killing my mood. It's been a lot of soccer on the past week or so. So it's been very nice to, I don't know, just like more general conversation about it. It's been good. I'm here, of course, with Clay Trainum, Valer Shabilla. Life, y'all. What's going on? How are things? How's the fam? What's up?
I'm in
Going on?
Michigan, and if you hear any background noise like this, it's because there are children above me. Well, there's one very active child, and the other child is watching the Euro game, but they are
So that
running
one's the
around.
better child, is what you were saying?
There's just age difference. One of them just can't watch soccer yet because they don't understand it quite yet. But I'm in Michigan here with my family, having a good time. Came here on Sunday after the NSC game Saturday, went to sleep, woke up early, hit the road. I stopped by the same rest area that I stopped at last time when I recorded a segment of the episode. Y'all remember that? I was like, wow, I know this area. Anyway, so yeah, it's good. Good times.
Some real entertaining coverage there from Valer Shabilla happening.
Yeah, other than me being with my family here, which I'm sure we'll do some fun stuff. Yeah, I helped someone move. That was the only other thing I did.
Does this mean there's going to be guests on your post game videos this week, as
Yeah,
there
I'm
was
gonna I'm
previously?
depending on the pool schedule and the activity schedules out there, uh there might be some cameos in my post game reaction.
Love it. Clay, what's up?
I had a pretty packed weekend, honestly. So I had some college friends come into town to go to their first Nashville SC game. Uh, we got our barbecue on. We went curling for the first time ever.
Always a good
Uh,
time.
Yeah, it was. I am very happy that they have a version for people who don't have full use of their knees. So I did more ice shuffleboard, but one of my friends did full on curling and had a good time with that. And then we watched the NSC game and then had a bit of a board game night last night, which mostly devolved into playing Munchkin and Dream Crush a few times. So
Munchkin is such a great and underrated game. It's so much fun.
yeah, and Dream Crush is a personal favorite. Can't recommend enough. But yeah, it's a good time. It was a busy weekend, but we had a lot of fun and I obviously still also got in a lot of soccer because I was having fun watching England's demise for a few minutes at least.
Yeah,
So
it's really unfortunate. Like I root for England's demise all the time for sure. And then for some reason it always just it lingers in the back of my brain and then like I just start like not just as get quieter. I'm like, haha, England, you suck. And then I remember like learning the stat of like domestic abuse cases in England are on the rise after they lose in any sort of match. And then that has just lingered in the back of my brain whenever I root for the demise of England. And so now I can't do that. I just turn into a quiet mess.
I just root for England to lose, but no Everton players to be the reason they lost, which is a little bit harder to do when the goalkeeper is an Evertonian. But either way, I was enjoying it, and then that goal happened, and I know we'll talk about it later, but that goal happened, and then I was like, I actually was kind of all right with it because it was such a great ending. Like,
That's a really good ending.
yeah,
But no, it's been fun to have so much soccer. It's weird to have like definitely feels like MLS is a little bit on the back burner right now, even though it's like normally just like the majority of our focus, but there's so much, just different soccer going on, uh, where we kind of lose a little bit of grips on it. Definitely Messi not being, even a part of the, Miami team, definitely adds a little bit of, kind of difference in the context of things. I'm actually curious from your guys' perspective, what was it like um with not having Messi, in and not even on the team sheet? Did it seem like there was still a decent amount of Miami fans there? What was it kind of like?
there was definitely a lot of Miami fans there. There were a lot of Messi fans. I mean, there were a lot of Messi jerseys, I should say. I will say this. even though there's no Messi or Suarez there, uh, it was among the better game day atmospheres that you get at Geodis. I think they announced a sellout. It wasn't. I mean, it was so hot, but and I think that that played a big role in it. I think later in the match, people just kind of decided it wasn't their night and had to get out because it was so hot during the match. But I do think that especially the first half, even after the goals, there was still a lot of atmosphere, and it was a really fun place to be. You just wish that Nashville would have been able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think it was one of those that kind of these games always seem to pay off. I think for either neutral uh, observer or anything like that. But in terms of the Messi thing, I mean, I saw PSG jerseys, I saw Argentina jerseys, Barcelona, whatever you call it, right? So maybe it wasn't Miami fans specifically, but let's not forget Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets were playing last night, right? And that is, I mean, in any given MLS year, those two would be an incredible sell to any crowd ever, right? But I think Nashville are kind of, I don't know if lucky or fortunate is the right word, but Nashville has played Messi and in Miami more than anybody else in MLS. So this is a third opportunity that Nashville would have had to see Messi. Now they already had two others, so that's not normal in most MLS cities. So that's kind of adds to the excitement of it all.
The most important number 10, other than Hani Mukhtar, that was there. You know, Messi might not have been there, but
Say
Lebo Momodo was there.
Nice.
And he did not appreciate when we would start singing at him on the concourse at all, but he seemed to be having a good night. And he also, like many of us, says this team needs to score way more goals.
Well, actually, okay. So with that, I kind of have I don't know. I was thinking about this last night, and maybe you could kind of maybe there's not a question here, but maybe there is kind of. You look at the Miami team, that has played specifically. They're a pretty good team even without Messi, even without Suarez. I think that's established just with the way that they've played the past few weeks. We made a lot of jokes about Cincinnati. We made a lot of jokes about Miami and some of the ways that they are building and that they're just not going to be good starting off. And it seems like some of the ways that they have been building have paid off in some of those ways. Obviously, some differences here and there. From Nashville's perspective, it kind of seems more of a digression in the way that the team has been kind of building off. We liked initially how the roster was built out, but it's starting to seem like it might be digressing a little bit. Would you trade what Nashville has started to build up for what Miami and Cincinnati have now? Or do you feel like the end game for Nashville is just not there yet specifically?
I think I don't think I mean in realistic terms, I think anybody would trade with Miami for having the greatest player of all time be on their roster. I don't think that's even a question. But in terms of the actual roster build of Miami and Cincinnati, we're talking initially coming into MLS. I mean, it was miserable for the both of those teams. So I don't think what both of those teams currently have is related to what they started off with. So to me, I think Nashville is still a continuous project from 2020 now to where Miami and Cincinnati, those are brand new projects that started maybe 2 years ago or so. So I think in that aspect, no, I wouldn't trade with the initial one. I think there's something to be said about Cincinnati's new approach, which started with Pat Noonan and Albright coming in from Philly and kind of changing things around. With that approach, maybe. And then Miami with Chris Henderson and kind of the Messi era, that's a whole different thing. But the initial ones, I don't think they're related to what we're seeing right now. And then the other point of that is that both of those other teams do have trophies, which to me, yes, of course, you would trade that, but both those trophies came in that new era that I'm talking about. So I would trade with the new era. The old era, probably no, because it was terrible.
Yeah, I just to kind of add to that, like there's a few things. Miami it's impossible to compare yourself to Miami because Messi was never going to come. A player like Messi, especially, is never going to come to Nashville. So it's an unfair comparison. And none of this that's happening in Miami, even though it's happening without Messi at the moment, happens if Messi doesn't go to Miami. Like they play in the worst stadium in the league. They were terrible before Messi came along. And even when Messi's not there, even though they're actually pretty good even without him, their fans haven't shown up to those games that he's not played. So it's all singularly tied to one person. And I don't think that's good for the game in Nashville. So like it's good for the short term, but long term there might be some issues. I also think with Cincinnati, in addition to like the reason they're good is tied to them directly being so bad for so long. Uh, it's going to be interesting for both Miami and to go back to that Miami point and this Cincinnati point is we have to judge these with longer windows. Like we have seen what this project looks like for Miami and for Cincinnati right now, and they have gotten trophies, and that will be remembered fondly. And I'm not going to take anything away from that, but we also have to see where they are 3 and 4 years from now. Because if you would have talked to anybody in the league in 2021, they would have told you what Nashville's doing is special. What Nashville's doing is unprecedented. Everything that this Nashville team is doing is something that new teams should model themselves after. And now we've seen that hit the plateau, a few years later. And so I think that it's worth keeping that in mind because Nashville wasn't particularly far away from having a trophy like Miami has or from making a really deep postseason run. They lost on penalties to Philadelphia. And so like I think you have to remember scope here. And that is the thing to keep in mind whenever you make these direct comparisons. I also think that it's worth noting, although I have my issues with noting it specifically, Nashville is paying a significant chunk of its own stadium, which does have some financial in the way that the owners of Nashville SC are choosing to operate. There are some financial constraints that exist there as a result of that. At least that's what they've told us. So I think that is worth noting, whereas there has been significantly more support from cities for the other two stadiums. And I'll leave it at that.
Cool. No, I mean, I appreciate both of you. I think you both are, definitely right in that way. I just thought it was interesting. Just, we've cracked a lot of jokes and like, now I'm kind of curious on what, we talked about that bottom point for Cincinnati and Miami. I'm curious what that bottom point is for Nashville SC when it comes to a big switch in the demeanor and the way the team does business.
Yeah, I think that what Cincinnati is doing is sustainable and will be successful. I have my concerns about Miami as a city that what they're doing is sustainable 5 years after Messi retires.
There are also a couple more examples we can look at in Austin and St. Louis. Now they are in the West, of course, but both of those teams seem to have that sort of boom bust situation going on. Austin finishes second in the West and then doesn't make the playoffs, and their first season was awful. St. Louis finishes first in the West in their first season, and now they're struggling to even be top 10 in the West. So I think those are all other examples to look at of what an initial build can produce and then kind of fail to continue on like what Nashville did.
Well, one thing that we do know that it is going to be sustainable, though, is the people in our Patreon. And we cannot thank them enough specifically for being a part of our Patreon. It was really funny. We did have somebody join in on the Patreon right as we finished recording, literally 1 minute after us finishing recording last week. We did have a new member join the Patreon. Valere, do you want to give the shout out?
Oh, do I? I'm stalling for time because guess who didn't pull up the thing? Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. We got it. We got it. It's Matthew. Matt, my buddy. I don't know. Actually, I don't know this person, but Matthew, thank you so much for joining our Patreon. We greatly appreciate it. It's been it's been really cool to see our community and Patreon build and people like Matthew and others committing their financial support to us. Really ensures that we keep bringing you this show on a weekly basis. Again, it's $5 a month. And I think Tyler got a shout out last show, but if he didn't, that's for you, Tyler, too. But I'm pretty sure he got it last show or the show before, maybe. But Matthew, again, thank you so much for joining, becoming a patient plus, as we call it. And yeah, again, it's $5 a month, which isn't a whole lot for you, maybe, but for us, it means a lot. So make sure to keep those Patreons coming, and make sure to support us throughout these times as we bring you more and more pharma content and continue on what we have been doing for 6 years, 5 years at least,
Six?
5 years,
I thought
six
six.
season, 5 years.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate that. We're going to talk more about the Miami match in perspective, and then a lot more soccer to talk about as well. And we'll do that next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at PharmaSoccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And as Valer mentioned, we do have a Patreon as well. It is just $5 a month. It does help support the show. I think Valer said it best. It may not be a ton, like in financially for people subscribing, or it might be, but like it means the world to us. It really does help us continue doing the show. It helps us do a lot of cool things. So please, if you are not a member of that, would love to have you. So thank you so much. Also, you can check out our website at pharmasoccer.com. Yeah, I always now mention the website after. Yeah, anyways. Okay, look. Nashville SC losing at home on a hot day in Nashville to Inter Miami, 2-1. Hani Mukhtar getting a penalty goal at the end. I know Jordi Alba scored an absolute, long range shot. It's fantastic. And then I forgot who scored that first goal. But look,
Right.
again, as manager, kind of rolling with the same kind of lineup scenario that he's been rolling with the past, few matches, with both having Teal, Sam, on the pitch at the same time. Kind of sticking with that creativeness there.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see some limitations to that formation. Now, the formation itself is, whatever. I mean, you can put whatever numbers you want to it, but it's the roles of the players, or the roles that are out there on the pitch, and the players who occupy those roles. This time around, there was a little bit less interchanging. I thought in the first half from Nashville SC, in terms of Bunbury and Surridge specifically. Surridge kind of stuck to the left for a lot of it until the second half. Things changed a little bit, and then for Mukhtar, I don't think he was dropping as deep as he could have at a lot of times, and I think Davis and Yearwood didn't have as good of distribution as we have seen in the last 2-3 games. With that said, I think we have to give a lot of credit to Miami in the way they came out, because I thought they limited Nashville to very very few real chances. Now the chances were there, and Nashville could have gone ahead before Miami, but I thought defensively Miami were pretty organized and sound. And I don't think that's a surprise, because when Messi plays, right, and Suarez plays, it's a little bit different. There's this focus on one person. There's this focus on, let's get the ball to Messi as soon as possible. And also, there's just a priority. There's a priority list, and Messi is always in the priority. Where when he is taken out of the lineup, that priority is kind of distributed all around the pitch with a lot of different players. So Nashville weren't able to maybe just lock in as much on one player, and the ball was flowing a little bit better for Miami. All of this came ahead, and Nashville started the game really well. All of this came ahead, of course, at the on set pieces, where Nashville just were not able to defend very well.
Well, yeah, I think you were talking about distribution of just kind of where the, who takes what, with Messi not being on the pitch, that it's a little bit more overall for Miami. And that definitely kind of set itself up for that set piece kind of defending goal that was happening there.
Well, I mean, yeah, the set piece defending, I mean, we've talked about that on this show for years, but I do think it is important to, like Valer said, like, this felt like a very typical Nashville SC game plan from the last few years, which is that they really went after it the first 15 to 20 minutes. And then it seemed like they kind of fell off the pace quite a bit, and it just ended up being more and more chances for Miami. The set pieces were unfortunate, but they weren't undeserved goals for Miami. Miami had forced a few pretty good saves from Joe Willis. They had a few misses that they'd probably like another chance at. I really feel like some of the progress we've seen, specifically in midfield, but I really feel like some of the progress we've seen from the previous weeks were exposed in this game. Like I mean, I came on the show last week and said that Drew Yearwood has been the most important player in the starting 11 the last month, and I don't think he was really up to the task on Saturday night. I think he had a bit of a regression. I'm not worried about it necessarily. I think good players have bad games sometimes, but I do think that this game really kind of exposed that this team is still a work in progress and still needs, some roles defined, some leadership to sort itself out. And the set piece defending, I mean, it's not great. The first goal was not great. The second goal, I mean, it's a worldie, so you kind of have to tip your cap to it's a worldie. But on the other hand, it's, a guy that has the reputation of Alba and no one within 10 yards of him. At the end of the day, that's right there for it. And the old saying is, you can lose form isn't permanent, but class is. Like that's we've heard that, a million times following this sport over the years. And I think that that's just another key example of that.
Yeah, and the clearance itself on that one could have been better. And it wasn't just I think it was Lovitz who cleared it. I don't think it was him specifically could have cleared it better, but the whole sort of, I think they're doing zonal marking on it. Or even if it was man-to-man marking on it, I don't think it was man-to-man marking because he had a lot of space. So I think it was more zonal mark, and I think there was just some pieces that just Miami were really, really giving that defense a lot of trouble. Now, the thing that Montali said after the match was that he used the word "it sucks." Actually, that was the direct quote. He said, "It sucks to lose this way," because it was the two set pieces. Because I think outside of those two set pieces, Miami had chances. Don't get me wrong. I think they hit the post at one time, even. But other than those set pieces, they didn't look dangerous necessarily. When they have the ball, it wasn't like when Messi and Suarez are there. It was a little bit. Campana missed a sitter, put it in like Rosette all the way up top. There was a couple other moments where Miami pushed, but really never looked dangerous until those set pieces. Where, by the way, Joe Willis saved 2 goals pretty much before that first goal even went in. Joe Willis had one really good save. And then the second one was an incredible like diving save that he had. So I just want to make sure he gets his credit as well.
And this runs a little bit along with the set piece side of things. It was not a good game from the back line, generally speaking. Like, again, there weren't a ton of chances in the run of play, but there were chances that came out of direct errors. And unfortunately, after he'd made a lot of progress the last few weeks, and again, this is not something that I'm necessarily worried about long term because I think we've started to see progress, just like with Drew Yearwood. Jack Mayer had a nightmare of a first half. He just did. And if you go back and look at the passing, that it was one of those where he was struggling to make the right pass left to right. And then he makes an absolute like dime of a pass on a switch. And you're just like, how? How did this happen after the last few passes? And I'm not worried about that long term. He's shown that he can do that, but at the same time, when you're playing a team like Miami that has a few pieces, these are things that can come back and bite you. And fortunately, it didn't. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about it because, that kind of runs with everything else.
Yeah, and I think I just want to reiterate the point that Miami are the supporter shield leaders at the
Right.
moment without Messi for the last 3 weeks or so. This is not this is not your everyday team that comes to Geodis Park. This is the best at least one of the top two teams in MLS right now with Columbus, and if anything, top five, right? So, I know they didn't have Messi, but still people like Julian Gressel and Leo Campana, who was a DP on his own, are obviously still really good players.
I do want to say that these are teams that typically come to Geodis and don't always do well, though, because as we mentioned, St. Louis, kind of before we went on and earlier in the first segment, St. Louis came to Geodis near the top of the table and lost 3-0 last year. So
Well,
Nashville usually performs in these types of games, and they just didn't this time, and that's fine.
well, consistency is definitely important. We were talking about, Miami missing players, but Nashville SC also missing players as well, especially when it comes to backline consistency, not having Shaq Moore out there. Uh, looks like we're going to get him back sooner than we are going to get Jacob Schaffelberg back as well. But it's one of those games also where you do feel like not having Schaffelberg. It's extremely unfortunate because it seemed like he really could have brought in a spark of energy that this team needed in that second half.
I mean, that was the big thing for me. Like when they started making subs down the stretch, it looked like Miami was vulnerable. Like there were some chances to maybe do something. And we'll talk about Ajago in a second, but like that's where you go to the bench and you're like, this is where the depth really hurts. Because Schaffelberg coming into that game where it's 95 degrees and it's hot, and Miami is not a team that is necessarily known for being spry. That's a situation where he could come in and attack. I do think that Schaffelberg's absence hasn't been missed as much as we thought it would be because of how good Surge has played out wide in some of these matches. And so I don't necessarily think it's like, oh yeah, you add Schaffelberg and it's definitely going to be like the best. It's there's a give and take there that I think is worth considering. But when you're looking for a sub, you're looking for someone to come in, and you don't have Schaffelberg sitting over there. That's where it really, really hurts.
Yeah, I thought Miami left some space in behind for people to run into, but neither Tyler Boyd nor Surge are the type of players to make that run. And neither is Till Bunbury or Hani Mukhtar, to be fair. So I thought there would be space to penetrate Miami in those long balls, but Nashville is kind of trying out this new winger situation where there's a little bit more interplay and a little bit more a little bit more methodical way of building rather than just hit the ball high up and see if Shackleton can get to it. Now, not that easy, it's just a different way of playing. And that's kind of the thing with this formation and this style of play is that you need that plan B and plan C and plan D and all those going out. And I think Nashville has developed a plan A that is pretty good and has worked largely. But once that doesn't work, what is your plan B? And we saw this Ajago thing, which I know we're kind of going into. I think that might start being the plan B going forward.
I mean, if you want to steal my segue, you can steal my segue. I was going to say, it looks like Nashville SC has started to develop some sort of plan B and plan C, and it looks like it's for Sajago.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really say anything about Ajago's substitution there that is bad. Like Ajago had, I mean, except for not scoring a goal, Ajago had about as good a substitution against a team like Miami as you can reasonably expect. He genuinely looks the part in every way. Like what I was saying a couple weeks ago on here is he's clearly head and shoulders above the level of competition in Huntsville to the point where it's not really worth it for him to be down there as much as maybe it would have been a couple months ago or when he was rehabbing his injury, I should say. He absolutely needs to be playing more. I know that you can't expect a player like situation kind of creates these opportunities for him to play where Nashville's pushing and there's going to be chances created. That's not going to be the way that Nashville's going to be playing if he's starting a game and scoreless. It is a little bit different situationally. But the biggest thing that I was so impressed with him is that he was more versatile than I think that we've ever thought of him as being. He was out wide, he was putting balls in, he was getting in space that we haven't really seen because he doesn't have to do that, and he hasn't had to do that in Huntsville because he's just like head and shoulders above physically, athletically for some of these guys. And when he's going out wide, that's not what we really expect from a Nashville striker not named Sam Surge. And you're just like, oh man, this guy can present a few more options and a few more ways to build out goals and to get goals. And I was just so impressed, so impressed. Even more impressed than I've been when he should have had a hat trick in the one game he played earlier this year.
Yeah, because you see him against MLS opposition, right? That's kind of the biggest thing. Is like, yeah, you can do it against Mocha or MLS Next Pro, and no disrespect to those levels, but they're not MLS levels, right? So now kind of seeing it on MLS level unfold in front of us, it kind of it shows you the proof. And I also think that he plays that. I don't know if this was just a product of Nashville being down, and that's why they played it in that way. But he plays that position completely different than Till Bunbury, and It was instruction. I don't think it's a player profile thing. It was just instruction of how he played that position. There was a lot more interchanging with him and Sam Surridge first and foremost. You saw Sam Surridge come middle a lot of times, and I think that's because Nashville were down, but also that does give you some sort of maybe an outlook onto what that would look like if Ajago was to start, which I think he did enough in his 3 cameos, but especially against Miami to gain the start in the upcoming match, especially with 2 games coming up this week.
Yeah, I don't think that this was out of character from Ajago, which is the part that I'm really most excited about. Uh, if you go back to the Toronto game, where Surge scores to win it in added time, if you watch the clip, Ajago has found space for himself at the 6, basically, that he's going to have the shot on goal. It's just they went to Surge instead of Ajago. That's Ajago finding himself in a place where he can be successful. And I think that I've seen that from him a few times where he's getting into space. It's instinctual. He's getting into the right spaces where you expect him to be successful. And I'm really, really, really excited about that part.
And while we're talking about sort of plan B or maybe different players coming in, Sean Davis did have a little bit of an injury, blocking one shot, and he was replaced by Amar Sejdic, and Brian Anunga came in for Drew Yearwood. I wouldn't be surprised if that duo, Brian Anunga and Amar Sejdic, started one of these 2 matches, or at least one of them got a start or two, especially if Davis isn't able to kind of perform to that same level, and there are 2 games coming up again.
Yeah, there was a lot of other soccer that went along this week from an international perspective. And again, as Valera alluded to, another dual match week coming up. So we'll talk about that right here next on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at PharmaSoccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We also have a Patreon, as we discussed. You can look that up at PharmaSoccer. Would appreciate you joining, be a supporter of the show. We really appreciate it. And also pharmasoccer.com. Look, before we kind of get into the Copa Euro stuff and, just the week coming up, this never happens on this show where a news announcement is made while we're recording the show so that
I
we
was
are
literally about to say the same thing.
so we can actually talk about it as it happens. And this is terrific. All-Stars have been announced, and Nashville does have a member of the team that will be on that All-Star lineup. Shout out to Hani Mukhtar for making the All-Star team. So obviously it's not his best year in a Nashville SC, but we know he's an All-Star. We know the talent that he has. So shout out to Hani.
3rd year in a row, right?
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I mean, for him also to be in that spotlight, it's good for the image, and he's one of the highest paid players in MLS now, so it all really makes sense for him to be there. And I think they went back to the Liga MX All-Star versus MLS All-Stars, which is a much better, more fun format than what they did play in a European team. Even though that European team last year was my favorite team, Arsenal, I still didn't enjoy that. It just seemed like a team versus a disjointed team, to where when they play in another All-Star, it just makes more sense. They're both unfamiliar with each other, and they kind of do the fun little games and all that. I'm a big fan of the All-Star week. There's a lot of these like skill games and whatnot are really fun, but I really think MLS should stick to playing other All-Star teams instead of just bringing like some European giant.
The thing that is exciting to me, and we talked about this previously, is it's clearly Hani getting through on reputation. And I think he's had a fine season, not a good season by his standards. I think there's room to grow. But the fact that Nashville's reached the point, because it used to be, I mean, he didn't make the All-Star team in 2021 when he led the league in goal contributions, and all of us were like, how? How is this possible? And I think that him making the All-Star team is a recognition from fans, from media, whatnot, that even when he's having a bad season, or by his standards, a bad season, because I don't know that I would call it bad necessarily, I think that everyone's like, yeah, but he's still one of the best attacking players in the league.
Right.
And statistically, he's one of the best attacking players that the league has ever seen, on the basis of the number of games he's played and the number of goal contributions he's had. And so that's the exciting part to me, because like we were there when Nashville signed him, you know, and this is at this point a career achievement award. And I think that, and hopefully there'll be many more And so I'm excited for it. I'm also excited for day one patient Andrew Fair to make a cameo in the video announcing his all-star arrival. So shout
There,
out.
there's only do you think this was a retribution for 2021? They're like, oh, he missed out on that one. Let's just give him this back.
I mean, we know what he could do as well. I mean, he did really well in some of the skill games as well.
Yeah.
I believe he hit the crossbar in one of the All-Star matches specifically to win it. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a really good picture of it in the press box. They have it like framed, one of the pictures that after he hits that, and all the players are celebrating with him. So you just see like this shot of like all the MLS All Stars, like literally like the top names to ever play in the league, just all celebrating with Hani. It's a really good shot. Might have to take a picture and post it of that one, since we're
yeah,
kind of headed that way.
And just to be clear, like I said, he's not having a honey level season yet, but 5 goals and 7 assists is nothing to sneeze at this
Right.
time of year. Like he needs to score a little bit more, but 7 assists is a pretty good total. He had 11 the last 2 years, so he's been getting a little bit of help on the scoring side of things. Even Nashville needs a lot more from him in order to be a competitive team.
yeah, and speaking of just other soccer, there's been a lot of other soccer going on with Copa America and Euros going on. I'm going to start with Copa because I think that'll be a little bit easier just because of the fact that does have some, Nashville SC reference to it. And I'll start off specifically with Canada just because of the fact that Jacob Schaffelberg has definitely earned his spot on that team. Really good sub in their second match in Kansas City. I forgot who specifically they were playing,
True.
which, yeah, and he ended up starting that last match for Canada, which then secured them in the group to then move on to the quarterfinals. So shout out to Canada and shout out to Jacob Schaffelberg for the way that he played.
Yeah, from the looks of it, there'll be one of two at most CONCACAF teams to make it. That second one could be Panama or the US, of course. Um, yeah, Schaffelberg has become a starter now. I mean, I don't know if he's going to start the knockout game, but I think even Canada fans and Canada sort of Jesse Marsh and his staff is kind of seeing the addition that he makes. But even if he isn't your day-to-day starter, coming off the bench and being an impact is a very important job, especially for a Canada team that will most likely be chasing goal at any given point in the second half, right? So I think he's really solidified himself a spot in the team, whether it's starting or not. It doesn't matter. He came in, gave an assist in the goal that sealed the qualification for them. So it's all in all, it's a really good cameo.
Yeah, he's the only goal they've scored. He played a role in.
Yes.
It's
Yep.
wild. It's wild that they're advancing with 1 goal scored in the group, but
There
they love it.
there was a moment in that match. Well, I just had it on, and there was just a moment in that match where Alistair Johnston pegs this long ball over to Jacob Schaffelberg, and I was just thinking like what could have been in some way, shape, or form. But it was really fun to see just the Alistair Johnston and Jacob Schaffelberg link up play.
And it also, he does play on the right for Canada for majority of the time, which is different than what he plays for Nashville on the left, of course. I think you got a player who has a pretty good left foot. If you put him on the right, they can kind of cut in and do the Robin thing that we've seen all throughout. That classic winger sort of cut in, hit one with their left. But I think he's versatile enough to play both position in a pretty good way. I think with Sam Surridge playing on the left side, does Schackelberg come in and play on the right? Who knows? So I think at the very least it gives Nashville another sort of solution if needed.
And then, I mean, I don't really want to talk a ton about the U.S. if that's okay. Shaq Moore has yet to see the pitch for the U.S. team. Not shocking. I think Joe Scally has been fine in that right back role. U.S. though losing that match to Panama over the week was not great.
We won't say much on it. I'm sure there are other podcasts who cover this all throughout the nation, but I will say my thoughts of they need to beat Uruguay by 3 goals, and I don't think that's happening. So that's where I'm at.
I think that they just rely too much on MLS players. players. That's the problem
Yeah,
with
yeah.
soccer. It's just too much on MLS players because MLS players, they just aren't up to snuff. And that's the real problem with US soccer. So if they can go ahead and figure out how to use fewer MLS players in this Copa America, they'll probably they'll get there.
Give
Yeah, the
me
problem is Tim Ream, because he's the new Charlotte player. That's if he was still at Fulham, that wouldn't have happened.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yes or no, does Berhalter get fired if they don't make it out of group?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he probably does.
I think if they don't make it out of the group, it would be a really hard sell to keep him.
Uh, Clay, any sort of local soccer update that you also want to provide for us?
By the way, I put
Yes.
that on the rundown without having any idea if there was any update. It's like, I think he does.
Uh, yeah, it's not ideal. I'll say that. So the FC Nashville Wolves did score its first goals of the season. Unfortunately, it was in their last game of the season. And unfortunately, it came after losing 6-0 to 865 Alliance. And then they turned around and lost 7-2 to Chattanooga, both at home. So their season in the WPSL has ended with, I believe that makes it 30, ooh, like 50 goals conceded, with 2 goals scored. Not great. Nashville Rhythm's season unfortunately looks to have come to an end as they lost 2-0 on the road to Decatur. And then on the other side of things in the USL, you've got TSC Women. Their season has probably ended with a 4-1 loss to Asheville. And the TSC men, they have a few games left and they're in second place, but it's unlikely that they'll catch Asheville for the playoffs. They will play Birmingham later today. And that's away, and they'll play Asheville at home, and they got a couple more games after that, but we'll talk about that next week. So not too many, no wins. There have been no wins in Nashville national amateur leagues over the last week. So shout out to them. And to be clear on the US point, I mean Panama's playing Bolivia, right?
Yes.
So if the US wins and Panama doesn't win, then the US would be through, right?
Yes, but the chances of Panama not winning against Bolivia are slim to none. Let's just go ahead and say that.
Chances of Panama not winning against the US would have been slim before the game started. So who knows?
Fair
It's
enough.
Copa America.
True. The chances of England coming back and winning that
Jurgen,
game were slim
Jurgen
to
Klinsmann
none.
was an absolutely terrible manager, and he made the semifinals of this tournament. So
And it's important. I mean, Panama are missing their star player, Coco Carrasquilla, for absolutely kicking the crap out of Christian Pulisic. I mean, it's wild. I've never seen anything in a professional game like that. This is what I do when we play like rec
Yeah,
soccer.
that's what Valair does when he gets angry. That was my first thought specifically.
Like I've gotten red carded at a rec soccer game for that challenge because I was frustrated somebody's faster than me, which is very common. It happens a lot. No, I'm not fast. But I'm just saying that's the level of that challenge. I don't know why Coco Carrasquilla, who is the star for Panama, did that. And Godoy is not playing for Canada as well because he's injured.
I mean, the main
If
star,
we didn't mention that,
the main star for Panama, Animal Godoy, obviously, but
right.
But look, Nashville SC does have a busy week coming up with a match on Wednesday against Columbus, and then again on Saturday against Portland. 2 away matches as well, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I'm in Michigan.
So yeah, I mean, look, obviously we've talked about this stretch, for the past few weeks being extremely difficult, and that does not stop on Wednesday against Columbus, who decided to put an end to New England's win streak.
You stopped talking crap about Caleb Porter, and look what happened. Look what you got to be resilient with your trash talk, Steven.
Well, now I can talk more about Caleb Porter being garbage by the fact that he then let Columbus score 5 goals on him over the weekend. So it's great.
How many times have we talked about Champions Cup layover? Like teams come out of Champions Cup, and if they make the final, there's just all of this. There's this slump that hits, and it's basically an MLS accepted truth that if you make a Champions Cup run, you're really going to pay for it. And Columbus is basically saying that's all bogus right now
Yeah.
because Columbus has been unreal. And so they, since losing the Champions Cup final 3-0 to Pachuca, they scored 3 goals in a win against New York City FC. They scored 4 goals in a win against Sporting KC. They scored 5 goals in a win against New England, and they lost 2-1 to Inter Miami, who's one of the best teams in the league. And even before the Pachuca game, they were scoring goals for fun. This Columbus team is very good. I mean, very, 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 very good. And I have been watching MLS for between 15 and 20 years at this point. And these teams that make these deep runs, like I'm telling you, it's so rare that they just, I mean, we saw it with Nashville and Leagues Cup last year. It's so rare that there isn't a hangover of any sort. And,
I mean,
you
Seattle
can't
didn't even
help
make
but
the
be impressed with
playoffs when they
Columbus.
wanted.
What?
Like Seattle didn't even make the playoffs when they wanted. That's
The
how
only
like
time they didn't make the
detrimental.
playoffs in their history. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's just such a thing that happens. Like Montreal, when Montreal made it the final, they were like last in the league.
Yeah.
Like it's such a strange thing, and I just can't. It's so impressive from Columbus. I'm
And
so impressed by it.
just if you want more Columbus praise while we're on this show, they wear yellow, it's whatever. But they did all that while changing in leadership was happening. They lost their GM, they lost 2 or 3 other front office people. They lost Aiden Morris just last week, who is like one of the best midfielders in MLS, probably, to Middlesbrough. So there is change. They are bringing players in, they are losing players. Wilfred Nancy, this is only his second year with this team. Like, it's crazy. I don't think that should be lost. Like, he won the league in his first year, and this is second year where they made the Champions Cup final and are still the best team in MLS. So I just need to say that out loud because it's incredible what he's been able to do.
And they're possibly getting some of those rules changed for the Champions Cup just because of the whole, the food poisoning incident that did happen for the finals of that match, where they were just like, no, rules need to change. Our team is way better than this, which is true in a lot of ways. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. And then Portland on the other side, I made jokes early in the season about Phil Neville, but it looks like they have really been on the rise, 3 in a row. They've won 3 in a row. Haven't lost since May, a match since May specifically. So they're a team that's going to be really tough to break down as well.
Yeah, I think when you look at Portland, it's a classic case of MLS where the DPs are the ones carrying the load and the DPs deliver every time. Now, obviously, you need a little bit more than that to have a considerable team. But when you look at somebody like Evander and what's his name with the big head, Rodriguez. Sorry. Rodriguez and Evander. I mean, they're the ones out there kind of putting in shift. Now, Rodriguez came in, pretty big deal from Liga MX. Came in and was supposed to play as a striker, but because Felipe Mora has been so good, that's his first name, right? Felipe? Yeah. Felipe Mora has been prolific all of a sudden in front of goal. Rodriguez now plays on the left. So similar to Sam Surridge, what we've seen with that. Now his build is a little bit different and he's familiar with the left position. So now you have more goal scorers on the pitch. Of course, Chara is still there, who is an incredible MLS sort of lifer, who's one of those guys that doesn't seem to be aging. He is 38, though. They have a couple of young talents out there, and also their starting goalkeeper and their starting center back, Kamal Miller and Perpo, the goalkeeper, are both out with Canada as well. So they're missing some pieces, not just Nashville. So, but they've been able to manage that with missing those set pieces. And the last thing I'll say is that Nashville is going away to a West Coast team. Game doesn't kick off until 9:30, I think. So you have a little bit of it's one of those long trips, late game after playing Columbus away on Wednesday.
That is on a Sunday. Like, I'm literally looking at the time right now. I'm going to be watching this match at 10:30 p.m. on a Sunday. My life. Anywho, Clay, why don't you start?
On Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have paid attention.
Clay, why don't you start with the prediction?
I'm out
Predictions.
here doing plans with family. Sorry.
Yeah, Portland plays on Thursday, so they weren't going to do a Thursday Saturday.
That makes sense. Did you say predictions for me?
For Clay, we'll start with Clay.
Well, I think that Columbus on short notice is a tough ask away. I think that vibes aren't necessarily going to be great. So I'm going to go with a 2-0 loss to Columbus. We're going to try and do the reverse jinx on that one. Get a good result. They did that earlier this year in Ohio, where kind of out of nowhere. I think that vibes are great, generally speaking. They're better than they were a month or so, but I think that there's still a pretty clear gap between Nashville and the best teams in the league. So my vibes going into this match aren't great. I do think that Nashville does have success against former Everton players that manage in MLS. Their record is pretty good with that. Former Everton players that manage it, yeah, like Rooney, Heath, Neville. They've done well in those matches. I'm going to go ahead and say that Nashville gets a 1-1 draw in Portland.
I will say it's a loss in Columbus, 2-1. Um, maybe like a not last minute, but a late winner for Columbus there. And then for Portland, I will go ahead and say it's a draw. So I'm kind of copying Clay a little bit, but I'm gonna go with a 2-2 draw because I want to see some excitement. So that is my prediction. Follow at Valer Shabilla for all your Nashville SC coverage. If you don't already follow me on Twitter or YouTube, which you can subscribe to right now, please go do that. Instagram as well, at Valer Shabilla, and check out ki615.org. I hear they do great stuff.
I did it
Check
the
out
last
National
time.
Soccer Archive.
And NashvilleSoccerArchive.com.
I did it the last time. I'm doing it again this time because it worked out. It's going to be a 6-point week, y'all. Absolutely 6-point dual week for Nashville SC. 1-0 win against Columbus with Walker Zimmerman getting the goal. And then it is going to be a 1-0 win against Portland with Walker Zimmerman getting that goal too. Thank you all so much again for listening to the show. We truly do appreciate it. We'll definitely be back next week to talk more about both of those matches as well. Maybe have a coaching update. What do you guys think?
I was going to say, what are the odds that Nashville announces its coach after a loss against Columbus?
I think if there's a coaching update,
On
it will
4th of
be
July? You think they're going to announce it on 4th of July?
you're getting the
5th of July.
American assistant, right?
If
What better day to
I
get
don't know. If Greg gets fired, who knows what
And
happens?
Steven's internet dies at the last minute.
Does it
Oh
really?
yeah, we lost Steven for sure. Thank you all for listening. Here he's back.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm here. I'm here.
All right, well, thanks all for listening. We'll catch you next week.